Welcome back. This is This with Krish show. Well, it's official. The federal government is shutting down, right? Unless something changes in the next few hours. Funding will lapse at midnight, and the impacts are going to be rolling in. Now, the White House says not only will hundreds of thousands of people, government workers, be furloughed, but they have mentioned that they could actually be fired, right? So if this drags on, it's not looking good. Families are already getting anxious, communities are bracing for the impact, and the ripple effect goes way far beyond Washington, D.C. So let me be upfront, right? There's a lot of finger pointing happening on both sides of the aisle, left and right. Democrats are blaming Republicans, Republicans are blaming Democrats. And honestly, I'm not here to share my personal opinion or even pick a side. My goal today is simply to break down what the government shutdown means for you, your family, your community, and the economy. Now, I'm not a news reporting podcast, but one, I find it interesting. Two, it's current events. And three, it plays into a lot of the other things I want to talk about today. So what does all of this even mean, right? Here's what's shutting down. Let's start with that. Federal employees, over 2 million furloughed and without pay, okay? Contractors, government contractors probably won't get rehired, so they'll leave a lot of projects abandoned, a lot of taxpayer money wasted. The military, 1.3 million active duty troops, they'll continue to serve, but without paychecks, and they'll be made whole once the government is no longer shut down. National parks and monuments like the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone National Park, the Lincoln Memorial, they'll either be closed or really slim pickings on staffing. Smithsonian museums, the National Zoo, they'll be closed. So no National Zoo for you guys. Air travel, now this is pretty important as we're starting to peek into holiday season coming up in fourth quarter here. The TSA and FAA staff are on the job, but they're unpaid. And in past shutdowns, a lot of sick outs happened, a lot of that caused like crazy delays and flight cancellations. The food and drug inspections, right? There'll be fewer USDA and FDA checks on meat, produce, and medicine. And I don't know how that makes you feel. That makes me feel gross about the food. Nutrition programs, WIC, could possibly run out of funding within days, right? There's over 7 million moms and kids on WIC in the United States today. HUD will suspend rental programs and assistance. Landlords and tenants left in limbo. So there's a lot of people that will be in transition of trying to move into this, government housing programs and stuff, and there'll be a halt. Small businesses, or if you're trying to get an SBA loan, that will kind of choke capital for young and upcoming entrepreneurs. Passports and visas, delays mount. They will mount. Tough for any new family with travel plan. Tough news for any family that's trying to travel, especially since holiday season is around the corner. If you remember in 2018 and 2019, the shutdowns, trash started piling up in national parks, families at food banks, just lines. $11 billion was lost from the economy. It wasn't good. Some of that money was never, ever recovered either, right? So the U.S. mail, that will still run, but guess who still gets paid on time, you guys? The lawmakers. Yeah. Members of Congress will continue to get paid during a government shutdown. This is because their pay is constitutionally protected and funded through a permanent appropriation that is not affected by the annual budget process, right? And that's wild to me. That really is wild. But hey, if you want to learn more about the government, just read more about the government, right? This isn't anti-government, by the way. I'm just kind of sharing some facts here. So yesterday, Vice President J.D. Vance, our boy J.D., he said, I think we're heading into a shutdown. He framed it as a breakdown of responsibility. Let's take a listen to what J.D. Vance said from this shorter clip by, I believe it was Bloomberg News. Let's take a listen.
Tax policy, but you don't shut that government down. We have disagreements about healthcare policy, but you don't shut the government down. You don't use your policy disagreements as leverage to not pay our troops, to not have essential services of government actually function. You don't say the fact that you disagree about a particular tax provision is an excuse for shutting down the people's government and all the essential services that come along with it. So if they want to talk about how to fix American healthcare policy, let's do it. The Speaker would love to do it. The Senate Majority Leader would love to do it. Let's work on it together. But let's do it in the context of an open government that's providing essential services to the American people. That's all that we're proposing to do. And the fact that they refuse to do that shows how unreasonable their position is. I think we're headed to a shutdown because the Democrats won't do the right thing. I hope they change their mind, but we're going to see. Whatever our disagreements are, let's negotiate with them. Let's talk about them. Let's figure out a bipartisan solution, but you don't shut the government down. In other words, you don't put a gun to the American people's head and say, unless you do exactly what Senate and House Democrats want you to do, we're going to shut down your government. That's exactly what they're proposing out there.
So what you just heard isn't unique to one party, right? Leaders on both sides are using words like hostage and irresponsible. And that's the reality, right? There's plenty of blame being tossed around. But while politicians kind of trade stabs or jabs, it's ordinary Americans who feel the sting, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about this economic fallout that could happen, but probably will. So an interesting that historically the stock market, right, Wall Street and the stock market doesn't really react all too badly during a shutdown. Gold prices continue to rise. As of this morning, it's like historic highs. Actually, it's a historical high. So if you're heading over to Costco, if you remember this whole deal, go buy some gold bars. But on a serious note, some economic impacts are, the critical economic data that is going to be frozen during the shutdown, right? The jobs report won't be released. The consumer price index, aka the CPI report, will be delayed. And without that data and a lot of other pieces of data that is typically served up, the Federal Reserve can't make informed decisions about cutting interest rates. That matters big time, especially now as we've started seeing mortgage rates kind of decrease. I want to say up to half a point from where it was several weeks ago, almost 2022 numbers. Mortgage rates could possibly be stuck at higher levels because the Fed can't act. Families hoping for relief on their mortgage payments or opportunities for refinance, they're kind of out of luck again because of the government shutdown. The housing market, buyers stays sidelined. Sellers cling to their low rate mortgages like they have been, and then that causes inventory to stay tight. Real estate industry, realtors, lenders, builders, they all kind of see deals stall. Closings will slow down and refinances will freeze, like I said. So this shutdown, right, it's not just happening out there in Washington, D.C. It reaches you right into your living room. It affects you, whether it's affects whether your mortgage rate drops, whether you can refinance, whether the housing market gets any momentum back. And then there's this human impact, right? And this is what I really wanted to talk about. And I oftentimes get into these diatribes on everything else but what I want to talk about. So here I am. All right. Real stories matter. Right. Somewhere at some airport in the United States, a TSA officer is going to be showing up to work at 4 a.m., but knowing that they're not getting a paycheck. Right. I don't know how that makes you feel, but that sucks. Somewhere a military spouse who's juggling bills, wondering when that paycheck's going to land. A young mother who's on WIC is told that her funding is going to stop, so she can't buy baby formula. I don't know. These are just examples, but very real ones. Or maybe it's one of your family friends, young couple, just got married, waiting on a mortgage approval, and now it's frozen because the Fed can't get the data it needs. So they're backtracking and deciding not to purchase. Shutdowns aren't just about numbers, right, on a spreadsheet. They truly are about people. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, I mentioned a little bit about responsibility, right, earlier when JD Vance is talking, but let's put a biblical lens on stewardship, right? Because the Bible gives us a couple of perspectives. I'm going to read a couple of, where's my phone? There it is. Okay. No, can't find it. Oh, anyway. Corinthians 4:2. Those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. Leaders are stewards of both dollars and lives. Luke 12:42, right? A faithful steward provides for people at the right time. And what that means to me is, like, leadership is provision, not neglect. Proverbs 29:2. When the righteous thrive, the people rejoice. When the wicked rule, the people groan. Right now, the people in America are groaning, right? Amos 8:4 condemns leaders who trample the needy. Programs, right, that are cut off for young parents or young moms and their kids. That sounds uncomfortably close to some of you, right? It's not cool. Stewardship means living within your means, protecting the vulnerable, and not using people as pawns in political chess. And that is a common thing that's happening in Washington, D.C. Now, I'm going to add a little humor here because I feel like I just got super, super serious. And this is a heavy topic, right, for a lot of you that are facing this government shutdown. But it's bad, right? When the only thing open likely after a government shutdown is that IRS's automated hold music. Because somehow that never goes out of service, right? Like, it just continues running. So while national parks are locked, if you owe taxes, don't worry, someone will still pick up over at the IRS. Anyway, drum roll. That's why I'm not a comedian. All right, so here's the bottom line, okay? The White House says furloughs could turn into firings. While that's extreme, the reality is that it could and probably will likely happen if the government shutdown goes through in the next 3 hours. From parks to museums, from mortgages to Wall Street, the impact is everywhere, right? The jobs and CPI report being delayed, meaning the feds won't or probably can't cut rates without it, keeping mortgage rates high. The housing market suffers. There's finger pointing on both sides of the aisle, and don't get it twisted, okay? Everyone's assigning the blame, but ordinary people are the ones that pay the taxes and now paying the prices. Shutdowns are, to me, a failure of stewardship. Leaders, right? Congressmen, maybe the president, maybe, whoever, right? They're entrusted with the responsibility and trust. And I did a whole episode yesterday about trust. And when they break that trust, the country suffers. As citizens, we can hold leaders accountable, right? As neighbors, we can step in where the government fails, and as believers, right, we can put our hope in God's faithfulness because His provision never shuts down. Now, I know this is a really serious episode. I'm sorry. I've got some fun ones coming. Actually, more serious ones probably. Talking a little bit less about government, I guess, or maybe not. But this has been This with Krish. And if you found this breakdown helpful, subscribe on Spotify and YouTube, share it with a friend, and let's keep that conversation going. And until next time, stay strong, stay hopeful. Let's pray. Pray for our leaders in this country to rediscover what true stewardship really means. Hey y'all, thanks for spending this time with me on This with Krish. Now, if today's episode spoke to you, share it with a friend, because these conversations aren't just about listening. They're about living. So if you're on Spotify, hit follow so you never miss an episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now remember, keep faith at the center, protect your family, and live out your freedom boldly. Until next time, this is Krish, and this is the This with Krish show, tongue twister. See y'all next time.